Hi, everybody out in Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District. It's your Congressman Jamie Raskin coming to you and to all our friends across Maryland to talk about the American Rescue Plan on this National Day of Action that we're having to educate people about all the different dimensions of it. I'm hosting a virtual roundtable today to discuss one tiny part of the rescue plan, which is called the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program for performing arts and cultural venues, museums, movie theaters, and other similar enterprises in the creative economy, which have endured devastating losses in the pandemic because of all of the inability of people to get together and to go to places like museums and theaters and cultural venues. So look, we've spent time before discussing the economic impact payments, the PPP loans, the unemployment insurance benefits, the vaccination programs, the investment in public health and science and NIH and the CDC and so on. Today, I'm pulling out a small piece of the overall package, which I worked on to assist a lot of people in our district who are in the creative music and arts and live performance industry. So this Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program was established in December by the Economic Aid to Hard-Hit Small Businesses, Nonprofits and Venues Act, which appropriated $15 billion. The rescue plan, signed into law by President Biden on March 11th, appropriated an additional $1.25 billion and expanded eligibility. In total, that's $16 billion in funding for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program, which will be administered by the SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance. Eligible applicants can qualify for grants equal to 45% of their gross earned revenue with a maximum award amount of $10 million. In order to ensure that small venues are able to get the help they need, a $2 billion pot of funding is reserved for eligible applicants that have 50 full-time employees or fewer than that. The application portal for the grant program opens tomorrow. That's Thursday, April the 8th. So this is a timely roundtable discussion for anyone checking out. Joining me for the roundtable today are representatives from 3 Maryland venues that are eligible for relief and planning, I think, to apply to the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program. From the 8th District and beyond, we have Ed Zakreski of the Roundhouse Theater in Montgomery County, Gerard Gibbs of New Spire Arts in Frederick County, and Kristen McMasters of the Historical Society of Carroll County, the 3 counties that are part of my district. I'm looking forward to hearing from each of them about why this new federal aid is essential and how it might help them. First, I want to ask our guests to take a minute or two to tell us briefly about their work, their venues, and how they've been affected in the pandemic. Ed, let's start with you. You're in your 5th season as the managing director of Roundhouse, one of the big 6 professional theaters in the DC area, where you've produced many best-selling shows in Roundhouse's history. A few months before the pandemic began, my wife Sarah and I were fortunate enough to catch what was probably one of the last in-person shows that you did at Roundhouse before facilities had to close and everything transitioned to virtual. Ed, can you tell us a little bit about Roundhouse and how you've been affected by the pandemic?
Thank you. I'd be glad to. I'm actually quite proud of how Roundhouse responded. While we had to make some hard decisions, it really wasn't hard for us to make them. We were fortunate that our board and staff had just worked together to create Roundhouse's new mission of theater for everyone and organizational values of artistic ambition, community, empathy, and integrity. So when the pandemic hit, we were all aligned about what was important to us, and we quickly coalesced around some guiding principles to keep as many people employed as possible, to provide artistic and educational offerings online until we can return to in-person performance, to stay financially stable so we can make that return robustly when it happens, and to do all of our work with an eye toward advancing equity, diversity, inclusion, and access at Roundhouse in our industry and in our community. So we pivoted right away to virtual programming. We created an original web series about the pandemic called Homebound, and we did that to employ the actors whose shows at Roundhouse were canceled. And we then commissioned 10 local playwrights and gave them complete latitude to write their response to the pandemic. We started out thinking it would be about baking sourdough bread and binging shows on Netflix. And we ended up dealing with serious issues, including racial injustice and economic insecurity. We also provided free education activities every week for students from elementary through high school and held online conversations with major American playwrights. As it became apparent that this was going to go through and past the summer, we decided to do a full season of online programming. We did a foreplay work of the Festival of Adrienne Kennedy, who's one of the great American playwrights. And that festival was just nominated for a Drama League Award in New York. We also produced a world premiere of a new play by America's most produced playwright, Lauren Gunderson, about one of the world's leading virologists who has been promoting the concept of pandemic insurance for years. And this man just happened to be her husband. Because of all this work, we've got amazing press coverage multiple times in the New York Times, New Yorker Magazine, The Economist, NPR, PBS NewsHour. And we're now in the midst of a 3-play virtual spring season, focusing on one-person shows with deeply personal stories. And our goal is to build that sense of interpersonal connection that we've all been missing for this past year. A couple of weeks ago, we released A Boy and His Soul, which is the coming of age story of a young Black man in Philadelphia in the 70s and 80s, told through the soul music of that time. Right now, we're about to film Throw Me on the Burn Pile and Light Me Up, which is the story of a young girl in the Deep South and her father, who was a lawyer defending people on death row. And later this spring, we're going to do a show called We're Gonna Die, which may sound counterintuitive during a pandemic, but it's actually a joyous celebration of life. And I think our proudest achievement in the pandemic is that despite the lack of in-person performances, we've been able to continue our free play program, which provides free tickets to students aged 13 through college. And since September, we've given away nearly 4,000 free tickets, including 3,000 to local high schools and tickets to university students from the United Kingdom to Hawaii.
Wow. Ed, thank you so much for rising to the occasion like that. And we know that Roundhouse has really been so nimble and creative in adapting to the situation. So thank you. Gerard, let's come to you next. You've been Executive Director of New Spire Arts since 2019. It's not in the 8th District proper. It's right next door in the Theater District in downtown Frederick, but I know that thousands of my constituents who live in Frederick County and Montgomery County and Carroll, for that matter, will come and check out your offerings. I yield to you, Gerard, to tell us more about New Spire Arts and how you've been affected by the COVID-19 downturn and how you've responded.
Sure. Thank you, Congressman. I also appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you, so to speak, and share some ideas on our plight. New Spire Arts is somewhat unique in that we're an incipient organization. We opened in January 19th. The venue is a black box theater, and there was a need in the community for a fully functional black box theater. The community came together and invested $5 million in the construction of this facility. It's that we actually retrofitted an old space, the old McRory's 5 and Dime. So if you look around me, you can see some of the remnants of that. I arrived here late in 2019, and we were just about to unveil an entire year of presenter series that was going to form the base of our ongoing support. And then COVID hit. We suspended all the venue rentals, all the programs, and retrenched at that point. PPP did help us through June 2020, but after that, I was in a position where I had to lay off 2 full-time and 2 part-time employees. And since July up until recently, last month, the organization was essentially a one-man show. But fortunately, we were successful in receiving some state emergency funds through Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Unfortunately, we were ineligible for Maryland State Arts Council emergency funding because we had no prior history of funding with them. We're right now in the process of becoming eligible for operating support. But we have in our back pocket a series that we're about to unveil at the right moment, whether it's going to be hybrid, whether it's going to be online, that remains fluid. My hope is that the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant will help sustain us through the rest of 2021 and into 2022 to put us on a secure footing as we move in a place to resume operations, even if it may be at a reduced scale. again, we were just about to embark on a plan to lay the foundation of our philanthropic base. So this type of funding is very crucial for our organization as we look to get back on our feet on a very slow pace.
Well, thank you, Gerard, for hanging tough and for keeping the vision alive. I know it's going to be very important to people in our area, and I'm very much looking forward to coming and visiting you when things are back operating again. And so let me come finally, Kristen, to you. You are the interim executive director of the Carroll County Historical Society, which goes all the way back to 1939 and is located in beautiful downtown Westminster. Tell us your story about how you've been affected by the pandemic and how you've responded.
Well, we are very much sort of your standard historical society that's member supported. We had about 550 to 600 members, and we had a staff floating between 3 and 5 people, but we had a volunteer force of about 100 people. And we're small. We have expenses of about $350,000 a year, but we are the largest Carroll County historical venue. So we support all the smaller venues like the Union Bridge Railroad Museum and Manchester's historical downtown museums. So we try very hard to be the place where you can talk to a real curator to talk about your textiles, or you can talk to someone about cross-posting your activities with other Carroll County historical activities. We try to be the team lead for the entire county. And when COVID hit, we had to cancel a lot of our income generating activities. Like all our campus tours were cut. There were no schools open, so there were no busloads of kids coming to visit our galleries. All our rentals had to be suspended. We had something that was called the Box Lunch Talk, and that was monthly. And we offered that as an educational opportunity for adults. We had to suspend that and put that online. We had Talks of the Tavern, which was a Thursday night educational historical talk. Again, that had to be suspended or put online. And the problem with putting stuff online is it's very hard to monetize it because there's so much great stuff for free online. So something that we had been getting some income for, we can't. We can't do bus trips. Our gift shop is closed and shuttered. So there's really very, very few online sales, which we have been trying to do. Our in-person efforts at soliciting funds has been iced because no one wants to sit down with you at a restaurant and talk about maybe, setting their estate up to help support you or setting up their business to be a business partner with you. Mm-hmm. Just one example of one of our really terrific fundraisers was the Bluegrass Bourbon and Bocce event we had. And we sold it out at 225 tickets in 2019. We netted 15 grand and we had to cancel that plus pay the band. So it cost us another $4,000. It's not just the lost opportunity at fundraising, it's actually real costs of having to make good on contracts that we've signed. So we have gotten to the point where some of our main folks know how to read a spreadsheet and knew the cliff that's coming up for us. And so I am interim executive director. I'm the cheapest one you'll probably meet today because I'm a volunteer as well. We have one paid full-time professional here, and we just picked up another one yesterday. But when it comes down to 6 days a week and you only have one person who's paid, it's a very, very difficult thing. And our volunteers can't come in, they're all elderly. So when it comes to just answering the phone or looking something up in our reference library, or helping a patron understand their genealogy history, we've been iced out, or the staff has had to do that kind of stuff. So we're looking at a cliff right now of $168,000 this year. And we've already cashed in all our grants. We were successful in our grants, and the state allowed us to convert some of it to operating. Some grants are not convertible, but some were. We're still looking at a terrible, terrible cliff. It's funny.
Well, thank you for your great volunteer service to the Carroll County Historical Society and for really stepping up and being in the breach there. but what all of you are telling us, it echoes the kinds of concerns that we've heard in Congress about the effect on the arts and entertainment and culture economy. It's really the same as what's happened with restaurants and shopping centers. And of course, hundreds of billions of dollars have gone into trying to rescue the restaurants and the shopping centers and to keep commercial life going. There's somewhat of a disconnect sometimes in getting people to understand why it's so essential to uplift arts and entertainment venues along with things like restaurants and shopping. A lot of people don't understand the fundamental importance of the arts and entertainment economy in Maryland and the number of jobs and economic relationships that are affected. According to Americans for the Arts, before the pandemic, there were 13,000 creative businesses in Maryland that generated $12 billion a year and employed nearly 80,000 people. Now, the vast majority of these businesses are suffering, and nearly 50,000 workers have become unemployed during the pandemic. People working in movies, TV, theater, the kinds of venues that all of you represent. That's staggering. And we know that the creative sector is often a spur and a bridge to other vital economic sectors, driving dollars in travel, tourism, hospitality. And so it's a serious problem for the whole economy. And I'm glad that we've gotten together to talk about the solution. The SBA Shuttered Venue Operator Grant program is going to provide essential aid to creative businesses that drive our economy, that employ our people. The grant funds can be used for payroll directly, for rent, mortgage, utilities, insurance payments, administrative costs, and other monthly fixed costs, the kinds of things that you're talking about, Kristen. I'd like to ask our guests to briefly share how you would envision using federal aid if you were to get it, and how it would help you to keep operations going and keep your doors open. Ed, let's come back to you. How would funding help Roundhouse?
It's absolutely essential. All of the programming that I've outlined so far, we were only able to do because of the generosity of our board and our donors and our subscribers who have stuck with us. And we have accessed the PPP loan, and the Montgomery County and the state of Maryland have been generous, but we're staring down a $1.5 million budget deficit for the coming year. And so this grant is essential to let us start planning for a return to in-person performance in the fall. And we have to return our industry to full employment. Those of us at Roundhouse right now are the lucky ones. We did have to furlough 6 of our staff members for 6 months, but as of now, all of our full-time employees are back employed. But we only have 2 of our part-time employees. The rest of them have lost their hours. And all of the artists, the actors, directors, designers, stage managers, teaching artists in our education programs, they've been mostly out of work for the entire year. And they're the heart of everything we do to achieve our mission. And they're really hurting right now. In the virtual work we've done, we've been able to employ more than 60 artists, which I think is the most of any of our local theaters. And while some of that employment is measured in months, a lot of it is a week at a time. We also raised a little bit of money over the holidays to send a small cash gift to our artists, everyone who worked with us over the past 2 years, but that was just a token of appreciation. So what we really need is the financial stability to get back to in-person performance, and the Shuttered Venues Operator Grant just does that for us. And like you said, Congressman, the arts are an economic driver. When we return to in-person performance, our patrons are going to increase their patronage of the businesses around us, like the restaurants that are struggling. And I also just want to add, this is a huge step for our industry, because for the first time, the federal government recognizes the performing arts as a small business, each organization. And that's vital because, like you said, we're an economic driver. You mentioned the state figures. On the national level, it's $166 billion of economic activity from the performing arts across our country, and 4.6 million jobs. That's not a luxury. That's essential to the American economy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Gerard, tell us about New Spire Arts, about what this funding could do for you. You kind of set forth your basic problems before. What could this do to help?
Well, being in a position where we are a new organization and really did not establish that track record, we had yet to prove our worth, so to speak, in the community, not just among audience, but the business community, for example, and dealing with that trepidation, whether it's someone hesitating to buy a ticket or a business that's not ready to become a sponsor. Having this kind of cushion to fall on is going to be very essential to keep this investment alive here. Our board has stepped forward. They've lent assistance economically and through a number of services that their businesses have provided. But really, to move forward, we're going to need that kind of foundation that SVOG can provide to help out with staff salaries, just the costs of running the facility. If that can sustain us into 2022, then I think we're going to be on secure at that point.
Yeah, and Kristen, tell us about the Historical Society's needs and how this could help.
Well, in a wider picture, I heard halfway through the pandemic a few months ago that nationwide, as many as 1 out of 3 historical museums will close because of the pandemic. And that's just what's going to happen. This is crucial money for us. We're going to need some funds in order to re-advertise when we're opening and how we're reopening. In a very small organization like ours, we don't really have even in-service web capabilities or printing for design. So, I can see $5,000 going there. This winter, we had 2 heaters blow on 2 of our 3 historic buildings. There is infrastructure stuff that needs to happen. We have a leak right now over our library. So there's some really basic maintenance things that on old buildings you expect. We have a state bond for $40,000 worth of campus improvements, but we had to rinse out the match money that we had to stay alive. So this money might help replenish those short-term funds and get another state bond project going for our campus. There's so many things that we could apply this to, from salaries to retiring our credit card, which is maxed out at 10 grand. We could really use the funds as quickly as possible.
Well, look, you guys have made a very powerful case about the fundamental importance of this very tiny part of the overall package and how it's a lifeline for you. And it gives us a glimpse into what the Rescue Act is doing for restaurants, for other small businesses, for unemployed people, for the states and the counties and localities that have been so overrun and hard hit by financial need at a time when their revenues have been plummeting because there are just a lot few tax dollars coming in. So everybody is hard hit, and we're all making a commitment to rise back up together. And I want to thank all of you for making it clear that the entertainment, the arts, culture, history are essential parts of our overall social infrastructure, which is so closely connected to our overall physical infrastructure, which we're also going to be investing in, the bridges and the rail and the streets and the roads and the ports and the airports. We're coming there too. The goal of government, the purpose of government, is to invest in the common good, in the public interest everywhere. And I'm proud to see very big sums of money across the country filtered down into Maryland, to Frederick County and Carroll County and Montgomery County, and see how, it sounds like a very tiny bit of money, but it is such a lifeline, and it is such a boost to our ability to keep going through the crisis. So hang tough, everybody. I want to thank you for the great work that you've done, and the great work you're doing, and the great work you're gonna do. And if you're watching this and you're affiliated with a venue that might be eligible for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program, I encourage you to visit the SBA website to learn more at www.sba.gov. /SVO grant. And you can always find out more by getting in touch with my office, but you'll be able to find eligibility requirements, answers to frequently answered questions, an application checklist, video tutorials, and more. The application portal for the grant program opens tomorrow, Thursday, April 8th. So don't hesitate to call my district office at 301-354-1000 if you need more information. Again, I want to thank all of our guests, Ed and Gerard and Kristen, for the great work you do in the community. Hang tough, everybody, and I'll be doing everything I can to see that you get the help you need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congressman.
Thank you so much.